Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins. I tried to record a different intro, and it sounded absolutely terrible, so I scratched it. Just thought I'd let you know, because I was feeling a little self-conscious about it. Anyways, episode number 60. Our guest this week is George Clarke, the vocalist from, I don't know how to define the band, black metal, whatever, from the band Deafheaven. More on him in a minute. Propertyofzach.com. Great website. Check them out. I don't even know what to say about them anymore because I've been talking about them for episode after episode after episode, and they're just a great website. You need to visit there. I think in about 2 or 3 weeks, I will be posting an interview with Zach, and that way you get to know a little bit more about the whole journalistic side of things. Yeah, propertyofzach.com. News, reviews, everything you possibly want about independent music, you can find right there. Go to the show's website, 100wordspodcast.com. You can find recommendations of new music and movies and other interesting stuff you find on the internet. Because after all, you need one more place to check throughout the day. You know, you get bored, pop on in there and go, wow, hey, that's cool. I didn't know that was coming out. I haven't listened to that record yet. Because that's what I do. I got my beat. I got my online path to education. And so all I'm a filter. I am bringing you what I would define as the coolest shit that I find. And essentially that's all that everybody does. But anyways, and then review the show. Hop on iTunes. Give us some stars if you are feeling so generous. And if you are feeling additionally generous, you can go and write some sentences about the show. It's been a moment. I haven't seen a review in the past 2 weeks. I get a little antsy when that happens. Is anybody listening? I don't know if I actually do that, but like the scream. But I definitely do get anxious where it's like, oh, maybe we've leveled off. Maybe no one cares anymore. Maybe everyone I've begged to do shit for the show they're done. They're over it. Based off of last week's show, we got a lot of new listeners, so thank you for checking us out. And because of that, we do this segment, I don't know, every so often, where I basically, it's a mailbag. This is, people email me, and sometimes they are interested in having the question answered on the show. Other times we just talk offline, and well, online, but off of the show. So Nick G, shout out to him. He wrote in, I used to love going to shows like the Plea for Peace, Take Action Tour, and any show that had a purpose behind it. I don't see as many shows like that anymore. Is it just me? Has the scene lost its sense of social awareness? Is it a money issue? And so he was curious about my thoughts on that and just the general observations, because I just so involved with this world that sometimes things that other people don't pay attention to, I do because it's part of my job and part to know that stuff. So yeah, the Take Action Tour still exists. Hopeless does it. Hopeless Records does it every year. They pick a new charity. It's changed so much over the years, and mostly just based on the bands. The core message of the tour is still there. That's cool. Plea for Peace, I think it was just a matter of that kind of just died out because I think the enthusiasm, because it's not easy to put this stuff together, especially when it comes to a benefit, because you yourself have to be putting so much time into it, which is taking away the time that you might be putting into a job where you're actually making money off of. And then if you're doing that, you have to be independently wealthy. I mean, if you're Bill Gates, you can be putting on tons of shows, tons of tours, donating lots of money, because obviously that's what he does at this point in his life. But clearly, people in the independent music scene don't have the sort of capital to just be like, all right, I'm going to put this out. We're going to do this. So I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily that the social awareness aspect has been removed completely, because you look at a band like Rise Against. They are one of the most popular bands that has come from our scene, and they're essentially a mainstream rock band at this point. That there could not be a band that's more politically charged than they are. Almost everything they do has some sentiment of awareness based around it. They're not releasing a record that doesn't have a political message. And granted, yeah, you could, there's a lot of other bands down the line as varying levels of popularity that you could point to. A band like Hostage Calm, they're very politically active. So, and I think some bands, it goes in waves. There are times where it's like bands are not as willing to put themselves out there because, that can, when you're drawing a line in the sand, when you are a band, sometimes that could alienate a certain sect of people, especially if it comes to, political causes. It's like, you might lose half the room if you start, or even more than half the room if you are, a conservative member of a political party and you're getting up there and, espousing your beliefs in a room that might not be conducive to those beliefs. Yeah, I just think some bands are more protective over it, but I still think it exists. You just need to know where to look. And maybe because as you grow older in the scene, I definitely think you become desensitized to it, where once you've seen it 10 or 15 times, you're like, I already know about this. I've already seen the table with zines in the back, or I've already seen, the vegan co-op bakery that's showing up at shows. Like, I've seen that, and you become desensitized to it. Whereas a kid at 16 years old comes into the show and is like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, you look at Warped Tour, they have a huge presence from a nonprofit organization standpoint. Everybody from, the company that I work for, or the organization that I work for, to, Clean Canteen, which focuses on people not using plastic water bottles. There's like a million different causes that people can get involved in. So I just think it's where you look. That's basically the simplest answer to that question. So yes, there's the mailbag for that. Anyways, before I keep this on too long, George from Deafheaven. He's the vocalist of the band. I did not know him prior to this. A few people had emailed me asking me to bring him on the show and talk to him. Let's see, I think it was maybe about 3 weeks before we had this discussion. I got a copy of the newest record called Sunbather, and it honestly floored me. I was ecstatic about it, and I immediately said, okay, this is the perfect time to talk to him. And then come to know it, he plays with a dude that I used to play in a band with. I had no idea up until like a day before I interviewed him, looked in the liner notes and said, holy shit, there's the old drummer of an old band I played in. So weird. But again, just shows you stay involved for a certain period of time, the world shrinks so much more, especially in the independent music scene. But George was great. I was excited to speak to him just because, sometimes there's these myths about people that get perpetuated, especially from, the black metal standpoint, that these people are misanthropic and aren't interested in talking to anybody. Clearly, Deafheaven does interviews, and they put themselves out there in ways that other bands of that genre stay away from. I felt like we were able to, kind of put a personality behind the band and not make them so maybe immediately intimidating. But anyways, here's my conversation with George. I will talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I start things off usually with just like my own personal experience with, just being introduced to the musical output of, what you guys are doing. I just remember the inception of the band, as far as like once you guys put it out there to the world that like, okay, this thing exists. We were putting stuff out on Death Wish. Like, this is what we were doing. For me personally, I really like the fact that, like I said, this style of music, what you guys do, can be packaged up and presented in a way that might not typically have ever been introduced to your average kid who likes, Blacklisted or Converge or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It just got me stoked, and I'm sure, obviously, you guys did that intentionally, where it was like, okay, this is exciting that we can kind of present ourselves in one scene, but also obviously kind of play above it as well, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, I just aim to write music that I find, to be interesting and moving, and I prefer, large soundscapes and, heavy melodies and things like that. I feel like, there's a lot of aggressive music that constricts a lot of those elements or just chooses not to include them. Of course, there's a lot of bands that do and do extremely well. But, I guess just from the get-go, we wanted to do something that wasn't, entirely typical, I suppose,
Right.
I don't know. We just wanted to kind of just do our own thing and create something that was, big, or at least attempt to.
Yeah. Well, no, and that's to me, just as your average consumer of independent music, that's that was the illustration put forth, where it was like, yeah. So I was excited for that, and I've been interested in what you guys have done ever since. But backing up even further, so we're born and raised. Were you always a NorCal resident? And do you say hella? Is that part of your vernacular?
I am guilty of saying hella. It's true.
It's okay. I think you're born with it.
Oh, yeah. Or no, you really just learned it, because I did not always live in Northern California. I was born in Florida, in Gainesville.
You're hanging out with Hot Water Music then?
Yeah, pretty much. They adopted me.
Yeah.
That would have been a lot cooler, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe a larger beard you would have had. Would you consider your formative years to be in Florida?
No. I moved around a lot, so I had only actually lived there for a few years, and when I was really young, and then moved over to California. I've been in California most of my life, but my family's from the South. They all live in Louisiana and Mississippi, and my parents were the only ones that ever moved out west. Yeah, and then I moved to L.A., and I lived in L.A. for a few years, and then I just moved kind of up the valley and literally all over California. In high school, I lived in a small Northern California town called Modesto.
Oh yes, I played some shows at Modesto.
The beautiful Modesto.
That's gorgeous.
And actually, I will say that I met most of my really good friends there that I'm still friends with. Definitely thankful for that. And then I moved to San Jose, and I graduated high school there, and then I bounced around a bunch of different places, and then settled in San Francisco 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. Why did what was your family structure like, and why did your parents move around or not so much, but why did they decide to leave the South?
They met in Louisiana, and my mom was really young. I guess they both were pretty young. We're gonna have me unexpectedly, and got married.
So you were a gift to your parents, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but they were only married for a couple of years, and then my dad moved. I'm pretty sure either him or my mom, one of them moved to California initially for like a job. I think it was probably my dad, and then or whoever followed the other, just so that we could all be kind of close together. I'm kind of fortunate to I have parents that are like really, really good friends. They've been, separated almost the entirety of my life, but I think it's because they realized that maybe they couldn't be married to one another, and that they were actually just friends, because they talk like every day. And my mom's remarried and all that stuff now, but they're still really good friends. So that was,
yeah.
I digress.
That's really cool. I like that. It's really interesting because obviously I think fractured families are just such a part of our generation. Because I'm 32 and my parents were divorced when I was like 3. And I almost wish that my parents were friends, like similar to what you were speaking, just because it was a pretty acrimonious divorce that I went through. I don't remember it obviously, but so that's cool that you were able to witness kind of like what a healthy dissolution of a marriage leading into a friendship.
Yeah, and I think that there had to be some sort of differences there, and there's probably, with any relationship that you have, there's always that weird after time where there's resentment and stuff. But these days, it's all good. But anyway, so my mom, I lived with her my whole life. And
what did they do as your mom and dad do as professional folk?
My dad's had a million jobs when I was younger. Not a million jobs. He's actually always been involved in like tech. He's like a senior recruiter for a tech company, and that just builds chips for various electronics. And yeah, he like heads up the HR for that. And was a very happy guy. He is a avid marathon runner and Southern blood guy living out in California and kind of turning into this like modern, cool bachelor dude.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's actually fairly infamous. Everyone that's met my dad, like my friends and all that, kind of laugh about him. He's a really extreme character.
It sounds like it. What did your mom do to make ends meet?
And then my mom just worked. She would do like office managing, and then in between that, and then going to school. She went to school for a lot of years. Like just because when you're working and all that, you have to you can't just do it all in one. For us, she'd have to do like just a few classes here and there.
Sure.
Yeah, that was that. And now she is getting her degree and lives a very nice life on the coast.
Nice. Well, and you're an only child, correct?
No, I have a younger brother.
Oh, okay. Well, it's cool. It sounds like you obviously have a good relationship with both your parents, and that's obviously at the end of the day what you want from a family structure, regardless of divorce or whatever.
Yeah. No, I'm very fortunate, and they're very supportive and good.
Yeah.
I'm down with them.
Do they understand the endeavors that you are a part of currently, or are they just like, I don't know, whatever George is doing is weird, but so be it?
No, they are like everything that the band posts on Facebook, they share it. They're like
so good.
Almost to a ridiculous degree. They're very in tune. My mom has already pre-ordered the record.
That's so good.
She's very excited, and anytime we have like a article in a magazine or anything, she keeps in. So it's yeah. No, they definitely know. My dad to a ridiculous degree. He'll be like, we just wrapped up a European tour,
mm-hmm.
and we had a UK date that got last minute switched from Leeds, I think, to Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were pushing it really hard, just trying to promote it because it had been a last minute change. And he shares that. So he posts a new flyer and is little, calls me Little George. My dad's name is George.
Are you the second, or are you just Little George?
I'm the fourth.
You're the fourth?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm the third. I have a 2-year-old son. He's the fourth. I think you're probably one of the only people that isn't obviously some famous duke or whatever. That's fucking awesome. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I have the name of an 80-year-old man. George is such an old name.
Oh, it is.
It makes sense, I guess, because I don't really meet any Georges either. Maybe not one.
Do you like being the fourth? Is that do people, I'm sure, comment on that once they find out that you're the fourth?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know if I like it or dislike it.
Yeah, it's just you.
Yeah, it just makes it sound distinguished in some way, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult at big family dinners, though.
Right. That's incredible. I like that though. Yeah. Originally, I remember being the third and having people always comment on oh yeah, you don't have an original name. They couldn't come up with a name, so they just named you after your dad. But then the older I got, the more I liked it because it's it just ties you to your family, and you're well, are you the third? No, you're the first. What does that even mean? It's nothing.
Yeah, I feel like there's gonna be definite pressure to. If I ever have a son, for him to be a fifth.
Oh yeah, huge pressure. Because by this time you're you're so far into it that it's you better not fuck up, Little George.
The fifth is that's being eccentric.
That's true.
I'm the last of my bloodline though. My brother and I are technically half brothers.
Oh, okay.
So I'm the last Clarke.
Yeah. Then
if I die, we're done.
Right.
Which means probably going to be done soon.
Right. The pressure's all on you. I feel you there because I'm an only child and I only plan on having one kid. And yeah, don't let it crush you. You could rise above it, George.
I'm gonna ride the wave. I'm gonna get out of it. It's gonna be good.
Well, I'm glad that your dad is so proactive in promoting your lead show. You always hear about parents obviously not understanding what their kids are doing because it's just they're throwing their life away or whatever the case may be. It's obviously cool to hear the flip side where it's not only do they understand what you're doing, but they're taking a very active role in your musical career.
Yeah. They're very proud parents. They come to shows and do all that. It's pretty fun. It's actually kind of hilarious having them in a back area. We played San Francisco with Russian Circles last year. We played this venue, the Great American Music Hall.
Oh yeah.
And which is one of my favorite venues. And they have this really just big, spacious, like, back area. And so, like, all the bands are hanging out. We're allowed to have, like, all the guests back there. There's beer, etc. A lot of etc. And so I brought my parents back there, and they're just, like, on cloud nine, there's all these rocker dudes around.
Yeah, they're, like, hanging out, being like, yeah, we're part of the entourage.
Mm-hmm. And they had me young, so they're young too. So it's kind of funny. They're like, I don't know. I think they're actually kind of down.
Yeah.
Like, we put Chelsea Wolf and the Russian Circles, and my parents like love both of them now, and it's hilarious.
They're not forcing themselves to like the music. They like are legitimately fans of it.
Yeah. My mom was like, I downloaded like all like the Chelsea Wolf discography, and I was like, that's pretty tight.
That's awesome. Okay, you're in Modesto. You're obviously going to high school and everything. What sort of kid did you find yourself being? Had you already been introduced to music by that point, or what were you? Were you athletic, or what were you doing?
Absolutely. I mean, it's that stage in your life where music is like your identity.
Yeah.
Every little thing you own has to have a band name written on it, or white out on like the Jam Sport. I have like a big Slayer on the back or something like that. It was total metalhead dude to a sometimes embarrassing degree.
I think that's obviously part of the process, because you realize, like, looking back on it, you're like, my gosh, like, I was annoying.
Well, I mean, I had like a, I'm trying to think, I had like freshman year of high school, or like eighth grade. Eighth grade was like cut off shorts, like the like long cut off shorts.
Sure.
With like chucks and like a Sepultura shirt, looking very ignorant.
Did you have like shoulder length hair?
No, I have super curly hair, so I always had like a really short haircut.
Okay, yeah.
I grew up my hair one time when I was like 18. Actually, it was really long, but I have like fucking crazy curly hair.
So you're like, I can't pull this off.
Yeah, it was just looked like a big puff ball, and like I was awkward enough. I had like the worst skin in the world, and I think it was like my feet were huge, and I was lanky and awkward. But yeah, so I didn't need a big curly mop to
right.
It's already bad.
I don't need to accentuate my awkwardness.
Yeah, at all. But yeah. So I was like, I just really like metal. I didn't really get into punk until I guess freshman year. I started like listening to punk, but like my like middle school years, I always thought that it was like childish because I was hella into like Deafheaven and shit like that. So I was like, punk's really hard. Like,
how did you get introed to, I mean, obviously, how did you get to be kind of a metalhead from that perspective?
My first concert, I was 12. I went and saw it was Morbid Angel, Slayer, and Pantera. I think it was the last Pantera tour.
That was like your first concert?
My first concert, yeah.
That's ridiculous. That sounds like people like to lie about their credibility. Like, oh yeah, my first show, I think I saw fucking, whatever. They make up some band. But that's pretty legit.
Yeah. I had, and Static X as well.
Oh, incredible.
So, they were bringing the new heat.
Yeah. That's good. I like that.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it was crazy. And like, all it was my friend Jared had seen like Pantera ad or something in a magazine. We're at that age where like it looks, when you find out they're like playing, in your town, you're like, oh yeah, we should go fucking do that.
Right, yeah. You're like, that whatever they're doing looks awesome. Let's do that.
That time it was like, God, so that was 7th grade. So 6th grade was like Deftones and Korn and like Cold Chamber and just like really, really introductory like new metal, because it was like the first heavy, and like Metallica and stuff like that. But this is like when I was like first heard about heavy music.
Sure.
And yeah, so 7th grade, and then I go see Pantera, and then I see Slayer, and Slayer like scared the shit out of me, because it was when God Hates Us All had come out, and they had these like huge God Hates Us All banners, and like the just intense strobe and fire and all that, and I was like, this is the sickest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, you're like, I am all in on this.
I bought Cowboys from Hell, because I always thought that like like, you should always get the first record of any band because that's when the band is like they're at their best. You know, I have like that attitude, like older stuff's better, even at like a seventh, like it's like in seventh grade or something.
Wow, dude, you were like you were a hipster before hipster even existed, right?
Yeah, I've been a snob for a very long time.
I love that.
Obviously, that mentality is absolute bullshit, but
Totally.
at that time, so I bought like Cowboys from Hell, and then I had just heard that Rain and Blood was the first, like, was the record to get for Slayer, so I bought that record and God Hates Us All. It was like a new one, and the cover was cool, and whatever. And then I bought Morbid Angels, Gateways to Annihilation, which is still my favorite Morbid Angel record. And it's so crazy because I remember at the time just thinking, like, this is really extreme metal. Like, I guess it's like death metal. And now when I hear that record, it's like doom death. You know, it's like so ahead of its time. It has crazy doomy riffs that are slow with, you know, just like this tumbling behind it. So that's grown to actually just be one of my favorite records ever by this point. Yeah, but yeah, so I guess that was it, and then I just kind of expanded from there, and then I think what really did it was I met Carrie, our guitar player, when I was 14. I was a new kid in school. I had like moved to a different school in the middle of my freshman year.
That's really hard.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I went to 4 high schools, but yeah, so this is my second high school, and I met him there, and it wasn't like. I guess there wasn't really metal people in my high school, but there was tons of punks, and we all got along because everyone hated the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I just hung out with all the punks, and Carrie is the one that like introduced me to all of them, and he was super fucking like hilarious back then, man. He had like
please tell me he had like Liberty spikes and
no, he never went that angle.
Okay.
Because it was before skinny jeans came out, so he would just wear like tightest, like normal jeans, I guess.
Sure.
And we would all do like take them in, sewing it by hand, just get called faggots by everyone. But it's so funny how that became popular later. Because I remember, back in the day, just it's like everything was done yourself. So he would have that, and then he had like a bullet belt and like an XL. Super faded, like Misfits shirt, and he always wore this jean jacket with a huge Dead Kennedys patch on the back, and like he had this long, really straggly hair, and just like Dead Kennedys was his favorite band at the time, and so we would just chill, and he would show me cool punk, and eventually I started kind of getting into like hardcore a little bit, but I didn't know that like it was hardcore. I remember in 8th grade, I bought Satisfaction to Death of Desire, that Hatred record.
Of course.
And, which is still a classic. And just remember thinking, like, this is slow metal. Like, I had no idea of what hardcore was, because I really had no idea about punk or anything even. And so I remember, like, this is slow metal, but sometimes they do double bass, and, like, yeah, it's sick. I'm down.
Yeah, no, I love that mentality. Like, I mean, two points you're hitting on that I think are absolutely incredible and so universal. Where it's like, okay, one, the idea that sort of the outsiders and the outcasts in regards to like you're the music people in high school. Like, no matter what sort of fringe music you're into, metal, punk, hardcore, whatever classification, everybody kind of bands together and they learn from one another. Like, you totally spread the same music around. Where it's like, I remember hanging out with a pop punk kid, and I was like super into Earth Crisis Strife and Snapcase, and then he gives me like Vandals and Blink, and I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. But it's like, if I didn't have him, I would have never probably been introduced to that. And it's like, I probably wouldn't have been, a more well-rounded music individual if it was because of that,
Mm-hmm.
The second point you're hitting on, and you do start to build off of one another's kind of identity in a way, where it's like you're showing each other, you're being supportive, because at the core of it is just music, and then the classifications don't mean anything to you.
Yeah, it's so much nicer not knowing what music is. Almost like it's so nice to not hear something and like immediately dissect it into like a genre. Like.
Right. I really would love like a slow metal section at a record store, and like Hatebreed to be in it. Like, that's incredible. It's like the best classification.
Yeah, it's just hilarious. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing was I just had no frame of reference. So then like I would show him a Hatebreed record, and he'd be like, "Oh, this is this is what hardcore is," and like that, that kind of thing. And we both were like really into AFI, and like a lot of there's a band called Scattered Fall where we grew up, who was like this death rocky hardcore punk band, and we would just go see them all the time. And then doing that, like there was so many punk shows happening, and we were like being 14 and we were 15, doing like Toxic Narcotic and stuff like that. Like there was just all these punk shows that I just naturally got into it. I was always still really into metal, and I would show him and other people different bands. So like even to this day, he like can't get down with like the Newborn Gear and shit like that, which is like my freshman year of high school and like sophomore year of high school, I was just so into like Cradle of Filth and like Naglfar and all these like symphonic, cheesy-ish, like black metal bands.
Yeah, you're like total European metal. That's like a whole different world removed from anything that was happening in the States.
Yeah, so I love shit like that, and like I'm not saying like I claim to know much about it. It was just stuff I remember listening to, and then on my 16th birthday, because I started because of like punk, getting into like The Cure and like Bauhaus and Joy Division and stuff like that, and being like, this is cool, because I started like really feeling the whole like death rock vibe, and so I was kind of getting into that too. And then on my 16th birthday, Carrie bought me both of the Smiths' greatest hits. I had never heard the Smiths before, and I love The Cure and these types of things, and I was like, I'm gonna listen to it and be like, I don't know, it's okay. And then like, I feel like they're one of those bands that you sort of rediscover, and when you like kind of know more about like different types of music, and you can like recognize what they're doing and shit like that. And
you totally have to be ready for certain things. Like, your 16-year-old brain, it's sometimes difficult. Like, you put just Joy Division out of nowhere onto your plate. Sometimes it's not going to take, like sometimes.
Yeah.
But then you're 18 and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, and then like around 17, 16 kind of, and then really 17 was the year that like I started just digging in music, and like when downloading was first becoming like a thing, and you'd have to go on like what was that fucking website, like Kazaa?
LimeWire, Kazaa.
Was it?
It was either. I mean, I remember LimeWire being a thing,
and
then like
Kazaa.
Yeah, I think that was. I never used that one, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I had that, and I had like LimeWire. Yeah, and that's when I was becoming a thing, and so like I just remember being so stoked because I was broke as fuck. I'd worked one job and for like a summer, but I never had any money. And so I just started downloading, and I downloaded everything. And I was just like, I would look in like the backs of magazines at like all the ads and just look at the name and type it in and search it and download whatever it was. Like if it had like cool cover art or cool logo and stuff like that. And I started finding out about like labels and just like expanding everything. I started listening to everything.
Yeah,
really got
it's so awesome when you hit that moment where all of a sudden you feel like where you have some access, where it's like, okay, I have the ability to check out a lot of stuff, and then like that's when it's just like you feel like there's no end to what you can discover.
Yeah, I was just really hungry. I was like, I think from like then to 21, 22. Recently, I slowed it down just because life has gotten so busy. Obviously, I still listen,
of course,
all the time and check out new stuff. But like, aside from 22, like 17 to 21, 22, I just consumed everything. And now I'm.
So I presume school was not something that you applied yourself towards, or like, did you have any inkling of like, okay, I want to become this as a profession, or did once you kind of start getting into music, you were like, I want to try to figure out how to do this?
I played a variety of things in different bands in high school and stuff like that. Like,
please tell me your first band, because that's usually. I mean, for one, it has to have a terrible band name, and for two, it has to be something musically just completely inferior. to anything that you should be doing at that age.
Yeah, it was really bad. Oh God. Well, I had one band first in 8th grade, which we tried to be like Slayer, but really, really sucked. And I had a BC Rich Warlock, and it came with a 15-watt red amp. It was like the package deal that you could buy at Guitar Center. And I think it was like the guitar player Slipknot had one, and like Kerry King played one, and I was like, this is sick. And it had like the Widow headstock. It was terrible.
Did you actually play a show with that band, or was that just like practice?
Yeah, that was like you invite all your friends over for the practice, that band. That was called Misanthrope, which was...
Oh, that's a perfect name for it.
Yeah, it's a genius name. I'm happy I came up with that one. And then when I was 15, the first band I ever played a show with was called Fear and Faith Alike, and that is some like really deep knowledge right there. That is,
dude, and that name you could probably sell to a band right now and get them signed to like Rise Records or something. It's like that name is so relevant right now.
Yeah. I should have been better with my timing.
It's okay though.
Yeah, we played a couple shows. We did a 2-song demo in this guy's garage that we made like CDRs of, and we sell them at shows, or most of the time just give them out.
And so that was your first.
And
so like once you started to play like out and play shows, was that like the bug had caught and you wanted to do that? And did you sing in those bands, or were you just doing guitar? What were you doing?
For Misanthrope, I played guitar, and
okay.
And for Fear and Faith, I sang. Yeah.
Okay.
I sang like total garbage. I don't know what. Yeah, but no, it was never like I always really loved it, and I always wanted to be in a band, but like it wasn't like a priority. Like everyone had kind of collectively assumed that like we were never ever going to be successful. Like
it was a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, and you'd walk around your high school and like put flyers up on the windows, and you're like stoked, and you have this like baby, celebrity thing that you think is like really tight. And it was just that. I don't know, but I always wanted to play music. I knew I wanted to do that, but like professionally or anything, I don't even know if it's still like a professional.
Right, you're still figuring out, because so many people have a conception about once a band reaches a certain level, oh, you must live off of Deafheaven. And like, I mean, you probably work jobs in between tours, correct?
Yeah. The ultimate goal is to hopefully not do that eventually. I definitely still work. Yeah, I'm like a cashier.
Sure.
I'm a really, really, really broke ass cashier that like calls in half the time, and I hate going to work, and I definitely pay for it because I can't pay for anything. I'm hoping that eventually I won't have to. That would be an extreme luxury.
I find it interesting that you obviously had such a long-standing relationship with your bandmate, and that the fact that you guys have been able to sustain not only your friendship, but then obviously coming together musically, like that's not easy, because so many people some people don't understand like how difficult it is to play with a whole band, let alone play with like one person and be creative for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long a band exists. It's so hard.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. I think that I'm lucky enough to work with, one of my favorite songwriters. And he's always been that way, I feel like. I remember him junior year of high school playing like Explosions in the Sky riffs and shit like this, and like it's cool. And it's weird kind of how it worked out, because I moved around a lot and stuff, so we would like kind of not talk for a while. This was around like 16, 17, 18, and then like randomly we started hanging out again, because like I saw him at a party, and I was like, oh shit, and then we started kicking like all the time. And then like I moved to San Francisco before he did, and I like got this house set up, and then I was like, you should come live with me. And then, so he came out, and then we started jamming, and then, and we played in bands together before and stuff like that. And, we just started writing what ended up being the Deafheaven demo. And I was like, we should just record this and have fun and not play shows and just put it up free online and see what happens. But there was never any intention of like success or whatever. The first time we got put on a blog, we were like, holy shit, like someone listened to it. This is sad.
Right. Certain bands start for certain reasons, i.e. once people have figured out a way to make a living off of independent music, that's when you're going to get an influx of kids being like, oh, wow, I can make a living off of my band, so I should start one. But you always, those bands sometimes end up being very short-lived.
Yeah.
But then it's like, you see obviously like how a lot of the bands that, you guys are friends with and you live in the same, musical world, it just starts from exactly what you're talking about. Just that like, oh, whatever, let's do this. Like, because I enjoy creating something from nothing with you.
Yeah. I mean, 100%. I would hope that you wouldn't start a band to be like, let's get fucking huge, you know what I mean? Like, or let's start off like wanting to be a rock star. We always kind of went into it with like a pessimistic attitude. So, yeah, I mean, not that we didn't like care about it. Like I remember like posting it on message boards and stuff like that, and just saying like, download this, like check it out, like all that. And but yeah, I never had the intent of like any sense of mild success.
Right.
Yeah, I can't go into it like feeling optimistic. Being in a band is like you're one in, however many. You're like there's like 1 in like 10,000 chance that you're gonna like do anything, and then if you're playing any type of extreme music, after you get that chance, like it's not really gonna do much for you. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah,
this isn't every dude I know in a full-time touring band like either crashes around at friends' houses when he's home, or like lives with his parents, or does what I do, which is sleep on a couch. I mean, and obviously, I don't give a fuck. As long as we're doing this, I want to get bigger and do better and do more. And I figure. It's not going to last forever, so while it's here, I want to do the most of it, and that's why, we fucking tour Japan and Russia and all this shit. Like, we've been to Europe 3 times in the last, years. I'm just, hungry to do it.
Sure. Well, and that's a good feeling. It's like once you've obviously tasted some level of quote-unquote success, which in your mind, like you said, is, like, literally putting out a record and playing in front of people.
Yeah.
Once you get a taste of that, you're just like, oh, this is, like you said, strike while the iron's hot. This is great. I just want to experience this rather than viewing this as like your sole source of income.
I mean, yeah, because I mean, if it ever were to be, that would be crazy. I can't even imagine it. But until then, it's just fun, and I have fun doing it. And playing a basement is fun, and playing a huge fucking stage in front of thousands of people is really fun. And putting out records is really fun, and getting to write and record is so much fun. Obviously, it's definitely work. Since things really started picking up, I feel like we, bust our ass and done, quite a bit in the short time we've been here, and I want to continue to do that.
Yeah, well, because you above all, you don't take it for granted, and you appreciate whatever stuff comes your direction, good or bad. It's like you take it all, and it's like this is part of the experience.
Exactly. It's just it's a thing that I'll probably look back on and be like, that was awesome. It was work, and there was it gets stressful as fuck sometimes, but it's the best job in the world.
Right. Because not everybody gets to experience that, and that is the reward in and of itself, because it's a unique experience.
Yeah. I mean, the first U.S. tour, your first West Coast tour, anything, it was huge. Everything was, and at the time especially, it feels massive. I'm feeling it right now. I felt it so many times during the course of this thing that we have, bubbling excitement. First time we heard about we're going to Europe, it was like, this is fucking crazy. First time, like when we got the email from Death Wish saying we'd like to put this out, I was like, what? I was so confused.
You're like, why would you want to invest in this?
Dude, I was like, we had played 4 shows, and it was like, yeah, I want to put that out. And I was like, cool. Yeah, all right, well, what happens now? And I'm feeling that now. Like, Sunday, they're just, I mean, it comes out June 11th, but it's pretty much out now, and we're doing pre-orders and we're shipping and stuff, and I'm feeling that, like, I just want to know what's going to happen next. And
yeah, you want to look what's around the corner. It's exciting because you've put yourself out there from an artistic perspective, and now you get to kind of reap the input from everything else that's going on out there.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't take any of it, for granted at all. I feel like every band at every level should always have something to look forward to and be excited about, while at the same time appreciating, every step that they are essentially granted.
Yeah, it's so tough to retain that perspective. I think no matter what you're doing, because obviously the idea of success is such a impossible thing to define, because you're always going to desire something more, and then once you get to that spot, you're going to be like, oh, that's it, okay, let's look for something more. But yeah, ultimately to kind of just like soak in those little moments of whatever it is you're experiencing and being like, wow, like stepping back and being like, this is something I can soak in for this particular night or particular review or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, 100%. And it's also like the biggest change that project was Deafheaven.
Yeah.
The biggest change that it's done for me is also like getting an inside view and kind of, things seem really monumental, and then they happen, and you're like, wow, that was awesome. But then you're like, you just have that buzz again, and you're like, well, God, it really wasn't that crazy. I could do way crazier than that. Like when we went to Japan and played with like Sun and Godflesh, it was like fucking crazy. And there's Boris and Envy. It was just like this insane like mini festival, 7 bands, and I remember thinking like, this is so fucking crazy. And then you get to see Godflesh and you get to see Sun, and then the show's over and you're like, those are just regular dudes doing regular things. Like it's cool. Like I remember thinking like, when I wasn't in a band, seeing tours announced and stuff like that, and being like, that's a dream. Like that's like the best tour ever. Like that's crazy. I would die if I got offered something like that. And then you do that tour, it's in your head, and you realize it's not even like that crazy. You want crazier, you want bigger. It's fun, and like we're saying, I don't expect it to last forever. I mean, if it does, that'd be cool. But while we're here, might as well just push.
Right, soak in it.
I'm kind of rambling.
No. I'm forcing you to ramble. I also think it's interesting just because me myself, like I definitely, like I said, I was cut from the hardcore punk scene, and grew to appreciate a lot of other musical genres, mostly because I worked at an independent record store and it afforded me the ability to check out everything that I was interested in. But it was really interesting to watch that trend, and obviously the trend still continues within the idea of obviously like how black metal has become more accepted within the sort of hardcore kid community, so to speak. And I use that term loosely because there's still a lot of kids, like you put a Agalloch record in front of them and they're going to be like, what the fuck is this? But they're like, people are more, I guess, open. It's like with Cobalt, Krallis, like all these things that it's like kids have the ability to understand that music a little bit easier because it might be packaged in a way, such as exactly what you guys are doing, where it's like, yeah, you can play with Boris, but then you have played with Ceremony or Blacklisted, where it's just like, oh, like I can kind of wrap my head around that because it's not these crazy looking guys, doing exhibitionist art and cutting themselves or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've noticed a lot of feedback from that perspective of kids being like, oh, I've never listened to a band like you guys, but you opened me to a new world, or, or some variation of that.
Totally. No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's I think a huge part of it is the internet. There's so much being pushed out, and sometimes it makes for fickle listeners, but at the same time, there's people that just wrap themselves in everything, and so suddenly things don't seem so separated. You go to a website and you have like this record, and you have like a Quest record, and then you have like a Ceremony record, and above that there's like an Agalloch record, and this website is just reviewing all these heavy records, and you're being exposed to all of them and kind of naturally grow to like it. I think that's a big thing, and I think it's also making it so that people are, you know, combining genres, you know, and then there's all this like melting and molding, and it's gotten to a point where people are irritated with creating genres, you know, like don't call it that, like just don't have a genre for it. I hate all these people that pick genres, blah, blah, because everything is becoming so melted into each other because we're exposed to so much stuff. Like, I remember when, like, Iskra was, like, the only band that I'd ever heard labeled, like, Black and Crust. And I was like, Black and Crust, like, that's fucking sick. And I was, like, 18 or something, and I was like, this is tight. And now that's, like, a total common thing. You know, like, no,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's a million, you know, quote-unquote Black and Crust bands now. You know, it's because you're just being exposed to all these different things at such a high rate that you can learn to take them and make them work with one another. I think it's really interesting. You know, there's so many creative bands coming out.
Yeah, no, it's cool because it definitely is inspiring because you look at it from the standpoint where it's like, I look at myself when I was, you know, 15, 16, 17, you know, granted that was like, you know, late 90s when the internet wasn't as pervasive as it was. And like we were talking about earlier, I don't know if I would have been ready to hear certain bands like that. But then it seems like we can question the authenticity of kids liking certain bands. But it's like, you know, your average 16-year-old kid, he's listening to Justin Bieber, he's listening to Kesha, and he's also listening to New Found Glory. The palette, it's massive. Like it's almost tough to wrap your head around.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the downfall is that I'm sure there's a lot of cases where, you know, it makes for a fickle listener. How could it not? Like, especially with like losing touch with physical music. It's like that is what, like, almost all my favorite records are from when I only get it by buying the CD, and it's because like I would wrap my head in it and like read along to all the lyrics. I remember just laying in my bed, like going through CDs, you know. So that's the downfall. Is you're having such a high volume. But then I really believe that, you know, the generation now is used to that, and so it doesn't. You know, there's some that it doesn't necessarily affect, and they can take time to listen to everything and like really enjoy it. I mean, I know everyone that I know at the desk job just like literally plays albums back to back to back, like. And you get to, you know, I think to a certain degree, you still get to soak up music. You're just soaking up a lot of it. And I don't think, you know, I think overall it's a positive thing. I think, you know, you could go back and forth, you know, about it all, you know, all day. But I think that music sharing and people, you know, getting exposed to everything is not a bad thing. And, you know, you can say what you want, but there is, you know, musical merit to, you know, top 40. You know what I mean? Like, there are producers that are like making those songs that are like themselves great musicians. It's so difficult, I feel like, to write like a pop song, you know. So if you can appreciate that and like pop punk, and then that segues into punk, which segues into, you know, hardcore and power violence, all these, you know, sub-genres, that's cool, you know.
Yeah, no, it's definitely positive, and I think it's like, I like the fact that you look at, because I mean, obviously Deafheaven is totally a target in regards to the idea that it's like, okay, you guys aren't authentic, you know, don't live in a forest, whatever label that people put on you, you know, as we joked about earlier, hipster metal, which every fucking interview asks you guys, like, do you feel comfortable being a part of that scene? And it's like the fact that you yourself can obviously retain the positivity of being like, okay, whatever, people will throw their stones. This is great that what kids are experiencing so many different genres of music, because it's just as easy to become immediately jaded, especially from your perspective, if a vocal minority is just sitting there talking trash on what you're creating.
You're always going to have people that don't like what you're doing. I mean, big fucking deal.
Right. Especially, I always look at it from the perspective, if you don't have people that aren't enjoying what you're doing, you're really not doing something that's kind of worth creating, because you should be making stuff that people don't like.
You know, like Carrie and I have talked about this before. It's like, you know, at the end of the day, it's still important enough for you to have an opinion about it. and that says something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like you could easily
For sure.
you could easily just brush it off and not care. But I don't know. I mean, I try not to be jaded. I don't think I'm jaded. It gets frustrating sometimes, like if you read, your own press and or you just like, do some dumbass Twitter search of your name or something like that, and someone doesn't like you, but they have like the most ridiculous reason, like something that doesn't make sense. I'm like, oh, come on. But sometimes people just generally don't like us, and they have a totally fair opinion, and that's all good. I mean, I don't care. Like, I'm doing my thing.
Right.
Doing yours.
But if people look at a press photo and are like, oh yeah, he's wearing an overcoat, I'm not into that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's just dumb.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I don't even get it anymore. I remember that when it first started coming out, me being like, "Wait, why are people tripping off the way I look right now?" Like, whatever. Okay, yeah, I guess it's a thing. And then it, like, for some reason, really became a thing. The whole thing's just been so confusing. In terms of like inauthentic or like these terms like poser. Like, I remember poser in like 7th grade. That's what you fucking called people because you thought you were tight. You know what I mean? Like, and then like I never heard it, and then I swear to God, in the last like 2 or 3 years, like there's this resurgence, and there's like the people that like are so quick to write you off. Like, you could have a conversation with me any day of the week. You want to talk about heavy music, and I am sure to very easily keep up. Sorry, I have a short haircut, and I don't look like an asshole. Or like my life isn't bands. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need a jacket with 50 fucking bands on it. Like, I'm not here to impress anyone. I don't want you to like look at me and be like, "Oh, that guy's legit for sure." Like people that do